Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all well, and thank you for joining us again on day 3 of the conference. We are now starting the parallel session. I have the pleasure of introducing the first parallel session of the day on realizing inclusive growth in integrated settlement, and we're going to hear the success story of Landafrique, the success that had Landafrique, and Landafrique Real Estate Infrastructure is an integrated real estate infrastructure firm. We have the pleasure to have with us Paolo Cruz, the CEO of the company, who is going to tell us more about the work they are doing and how, and hopefully we then can engage some conversation with the participant into their model, their business model, their solutions, and see how it could be replicable in the continent. Paolo, please join me on the stage. Paolo is just logging in. Just while Paolo is connecting, let me just remind you that this is going to be a 30-minute presentation, live presentation with Q&A, and you will then have the possibility to choose at 11:30 between 2 sessions: financing housing with diaspora investment, or the impact of housing in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and Rwanda. Paolo is here. I think he's just Paolo. If you can just please share your connect to the backstage by sharing your screen and audio, and then you will be live on stage. Paolo just need a couple more seconds to connect. Is here. So like I said, after this session, we'll have 2 options: financing housing with diaspora investment at 11:30, or the impact of housing in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and South Africa, and Rwanda. Both live session, followed after by a conversation on diaspora bond as a tool to finance affordable housing in Africa, or a discussion on how to resolve land titling challenge using blockchain technology. So very exciting morning ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Paolo. Good morning. Can you hear me well?
Good morning. Loud and clear.
Okay. So I will let you jump right to it. I will be monitoring the chat session, the chat room. So when there is a question, I will depending on how we are doing with time, I will either keep all the question at the end, or maybe I will stop you from time to time to ask you to answer some of the questions. Okay.
Feel free to.
Excellent. We have 25 minutes.
Merci, Olivier.
Merci, Paolo.
Hello, good morning, everyone on the other side of the screens. So my name is Paolo Cruz. I'm here to talk about integrated. One second, let me just share the screen here with you. Here we are. About realizing inclusive growth in integrated settlements. And you might see that there is more emphasis on the real than on the realizing, because we're going to approach a real-life case study, our own case study from Landafrique. Landafrique is already into property development and management for the last 4 decades. So we have a long-term commitment with our stakeholders, our communities, the people that live and work in our urban master plans, with the environment, and last but not least, of course, also with the shareholders. Now, inclusive growth is depending on the growth of the economy of the country, economy, and the global economy. This is all associated with risk and with uncertainties. And nowadays we live in times of few uncertainties, like COVID, for instance, like who's going to be the next leader of the world's largest economy, global tensions, trade, war, and so on. So what is inclusive growth? Inclusive growth is an economic growth that is fairly distributed across the society, and therefore creates opportunities for all of us. In the late 80s and 90s, the global organizations were forecasting and having interventions to reduce the global inequalities, which were not really resulting. So why do we need inclusive growth? Well, first of all, we need to reduce inequalities. We need to also create employment to get people out of poverty. Poverty is bad for the individual and for the households, but also, of course, for the for consumption. The less people there are with incomes or with medium and higher incomes, the less money there is to spend on products and services. It's bad for the governments. Tax revenues will be lower, of course, and therefore the spending from governments on their yearly budgets will have more pressure. As mentioned, employment is the main route to get out of poverty, and of course to raise the standards of life. We do this by embracing the SDGs, and everyone is talking about the SDGs, and we've already heard over the last 2 days that SDG 11 is one of the most important ones. What we've been seeing is a lot of examples of individual units or a few units together. The Land Afrika's approach is really more about what it says here in the SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. We are building master plans that are enablers for all the other SDGs where we reach and we try to reach all the other SDGs goals. So by developing urban master plans, or with other words, small cities, we're creating growth and therefore reducing poverty and becoming a more inclusive circular economy. The first step by doing this is to provide basic services to everyone, basic infrastructure that is common among everyone within the master plan. Having access to employment provides therefore a way out of poverty, but also a way to have an affordable house, a decent house where you increase your living standards. That impacts, of course, your health and well-being, but also your food security. It also gives a better environment for your children to learn. And of course, you will have access to clean water and sanitation. So how do we do this as Land Afrika? Well, Land Afrika for the last 4 decades has been developing. So we have a track record, an experience, and we are not stagnated in our strategy. It had to, of course, be adjusted. And since a few years, our mission is to develop opportunities for employment, education, healthcare, manufacturing, industrialization, logistics, affordable housing, transport, and mobility. That is a lot. We don't do it all at the same time. It's of course being done in phases. Some of this is being done by third parties, but all within our own master plan, as we are the master plan developers and once again the managers. We do this therefore in smart, efficient, and sustainably built master plans. I'm saying smart and efficient because the design becomes more and more important nowadays, where we try to eliminate the inefficiencies of the infrastructures, of the master plans, of the total integrated approach. Sustainable, because all of us need to think about tomorrow. about the next generations, because that's for whom we're building, that's for whom we're all doing this, for our children and for our grandchildren and the ones coming after this. So therefore, we embrace all the SDGs, as mentioned earlier, and more we are focusing on the sustainability side of our work. So how do we achieve this? Well, first and foremost, we have a great team. I'm very passionate to say that because it's people from different genders, different races, different religions, but we work and we live all together. A little bit remote nowadays, not always all together, of course, but we're working very passionately and very hard on achieving our goals. The strategy is one of the main underlying aspects on how we get to our goals. And we do this, as mentioned, by master planning. We see the bigger picture of things. And with that, we're saying that by focusing and by embracing inclusive growth, we understand that we cannot only create an affordable house, because if the person, the individual or the household doesn't have employment, he cannot afford an affordable house. So our approach is different, and we look at this from another point of view. The other point of view is that it's not only about designing and developing; it's also about managing. The operational phase is critical to the success stories. Often, settlements are built, but left by themselves to be managed. As Landerfeek, we have in fact a separate business unit, a separate company that does only the asset and property management of our master plans, where we currently are managing, maintaining, refurbishing, and repositioning our master plans to become more efficient, more comfortable, and 100% operational for all our stakeholders. We firmly believe that this is one of the key success parts behind this. Of course, the stakeholder management with everyone involved, going from the communities up to ministers or even higher. We need to have two mentalities. First of all, we need to be proactive and creative. This is Africa. We cannot think standardly as we did 5 years, 10 years, or even 1 year ago. The environment is changing, so we need to be proactive. It's challenging, but at the same time, this takes a long time to develop and to manage. So we also need to be a marathon runner to be here for the long run. Very important are our values. We firmly believe that our values are the basis of our success. As mentioned, we need to be creative, but also integrity, customer service, teamwork, as mentioned earlier on, to be humble, to recognize that we are all each other's equals. No one is more than each other. We need to trust us. We need to trust not only within our Landerfeek team and companies, but also with third parties. We need to be relentless, as mentioned. We are here for the long run. Our commitment, well, that speaks for itself with 4 decades. We need to be kind to each other. The world is already tough as it is. So let's be kind, because with that we reach more from each other. And as mentioned, we embrace the SDGs. We apply the 3 R's. With the 3 R's, we revolutionize, we restart, and we repeat. And we do it again and again and again. With the revolutionize, already mentioned the creativity side of things, which often means that we need to go back to square one, restart, think again, blank canvas in front of us. Okay, how can we do this better? How can we continuously improve ourselves? And of course, what is already done and works well needs to be repeated day in, day out, day in, day out. Landerfeek has a philosophy for our master plans, and that's the One Life, Live It Well philosophy. In this philosophy, we embrace a sustainable and efficient context where we join together the employment, education, housing, health, leisure, retail, environment, and mobility. And this, at the end of the day, becomes a win-win situation for all stakeholders. From the smaller stakeholders, the individuals, and often the employees, to the employers, to governments. But let's not forget the environment and all the life here on the planet. Human life, animal life, above and underwater. So as mentioned, we set up master plans, which are multi-mixed use master plans, which addresses the one life, live it well philosophy, where we put all the different asset classes together and try to manage this as an integrated community. And we're not only trying, but really doing it. And it is one of our success stories, as mentioned. We will get to it in a few moments. Our master plans are often teamed. For instance, our Agbara estate is mainly an industrialization, an industry and manufacturing site. One of our other projects in the pipeline, Kefi, is more focused on agricultural. Another one is more in the automotive industry. So each location has its own team behind this, which is the enabler to create employment, which is once again in our vision, the first step to get out of poverty and to have access to affordable housing. Land acquisition is not always easy. Gerrit just mentioned in the session before us, this is one of the aspects, and it's so true. We all know that in Africa, it's very difficult to have your land properly and duly registered. But even if you have sometimes a document in your hand, it can mean that you don't have nothing if you don't have the local traditional chief next to you. I can assure you that without him, you won't do nothing without his approval. You also have farmers that are often on your land that you need to compensate before you can really start developing something. So land acquisition is not always easy. Zoning and regulations are important, as well are the business codes, the construction codes. In our view, the infrastructure is one of the main underlying aspects for the success stories. Utilities and accessibilities. Important, of course, is the funding, development and mortgage. So both from the developer side, our side, but also from the client side, how do you pay for the land, for the house, for your business? And of course, the stakeholder management and communication. Now, focusing on the infrastructure, we are looking at several types of accessibilities. Roads, our Agbara master plan, for instance, is on a premium location immediately on the Lagos-Badagry expressway, which in fact is the Lagos-Abidjan West African highway. It's also immediately on the intersection where a new highway starts going up to Atan, to Ibadan, which is the west side of the ring road for Lagos. Rail. Along this Lagos-Badagry axis, there's a light rail currently being developed. Both Lagos and Badagry are deep sea port locations, and being on the west side of Lagos, and with this new ring road, we have one of the best accesses to the international airport. Utilities need to be reliable. You can imagine that when you create a master plan and you have industries that are manufacturing, that are operating, they need to have robust and reliable 24/7 power supply without interruptions, without fluctuations. Imagine a company, an industry that is manufacturing, where the power goes out, production stops, all the raw material that's in it needs to be thrown away, all the man hours that have been wasted, equipment that get damaged, all for nothing. It's taking the efficiencies out, it's increasing costs. Same applies to water, gas, sewage and waste, and telecom. We will get to this again a little bit later, but our approach to this is that it needs to be redundant, and more we need to shift the paradigm to renewable and reusable power and water sources. So, talking about this, we immediately get into the sustainability side of things. To design a master plan and its properties, we need to become more and more efficient. That means that passive design, passive isolation for the houses, for the facilities is of extreme importance. We can also not forget that during construction, roughly 30% often goes to waste. So an efficient design is also to reduce that aspect. For the renewable side of things, renewable energy, we're putting in a smart grid, and we're applying, besides the local construction codes, also the EDGE and the RICS standards. And in fact, our facilities are currently being EDGE certified. We're in discussions with EDGE to certify all our facilities. An efficient supply. To reduce carbon footprint, we need to think locally, source locally. So as much raw materials and products need to be sourced locally, and that's how we are looking to develop our master plans. As mentioned, the utilities need to be reliable and robust and efficient. But also in terms of efficiency, we can reutilize our waters, and we're doing that, and we're implementing also rainwater harvesting. Efficient lights and the technology, as said, with all the energy and water sources are there to help us with that. But there's also an important piece here is to educate all the users, the community, on how to efficiently use all the utilities. How do we execute this? Well, as a company, we have our board, of course. They approve an execution plan. This is then developed, further developed by our development manager, who works with in-house and out-house and outsourced teams. There are intermediate checks for the board, which are the DSPs. In terms of environment, coming back, we are also having on-site site waste management plans to in fact deal with all the waste that comes from the construction phase. We're looking after the safety, not only during construction but also after delivery and during operation, where we implement the respective safety norms. Although it says here that we use experienced contractors, there is an long-term strategy where our vision is to substitute partly the main contractor to take out that inefficiency, to reduce the costs of our constructions and bring that back to the end user, to the client, and therefore reduce the housing costs. We're setting up training facilities and programs for the communities and for the people that live and work in our settlements. And as mentioned, by first focusing on employment, we are also promoting that among the local communities. And time is ticking, so I'm going quickly through this. When we look at affordability, it means that every household has got its own income and roughly spends 30 to 35% of this on housing. If that means that every household has got its own income and therefore its own level of affordability, and that's how our master plans are also laid out, with the four different income classes and different type of housing units targeting different asset classes. Let me quickly go to the benefits are all associated with the SDGs. So on the contrary of what Gerrit just mentioned, we firmly believe that by embracing SDG 11, we can tackle the other 16 SDGs. And coming to our case study. Our case study, starting off 40 years ago, Akbara State in Ogun State in Nigeria, is a success story. It's a success story because not only because we're there for 40 years, but we have integrated different asset classes from industries, manufacturing, creating therefore employment, putting in more than 1,000 homes, schools, retail, market, and other asset classes in it. Already mentioned earlier before, the accessibilities. We're currently implementing our own 50 megawatt power plant and a 4 megawatt solar plant. We already have a centralized sewage system, and as we speak, we're currently doing a tender for fiber internet for the entire Akbara state. So how does an Agbara estate look like? Well, these are 454 hectares, where we put in a few of the more reputable tenants, also a few local ones. So you can understand that there is quite some activity going on. We proudly see this as West Africa's #1 industrial park. There, as mentioned, there's also residentially, phase 1, phase 2, and now we're going also into phase 3. There are schools, there's health, there are several different asset classes in this. Because a lot of projects do not come off the paper, we're showing that this is reality. The residential side, robust and reliable infrastructures, more of the housing, schools. How does our pipeline look like for the future? Well, we continue to, first of all, to work further out our Agbara estate with a few projects, mainly focused on housing, where the Southfields is focused on the mid and low class, where we have reserved a low to mid income classes properties. We're creating more employment with the business and data center park that's coming to the park, creating an additional healthcare facility, and we're putting in a strip mall to concentrate all the retail, but also to bring the informal market to it and give the opportunity for the local market players to have access, affordable access to a decent place where they can also reduce informality and therefore increase also the food security.
Thank you, Paolo.
This is how. Let me quickly just finish this.
Please go ahead.
I'm almost here. So coming to the end of this, Land Afrique develops master plans where we embrace different asset classes and start off with employment to create opportunity to have access, to come out of poverty and to have access to housing. We see that reducing poverty and inequality requires that we all need to reach the most vulnerable children and families and communities. Those are excluded by poverty, geography, education, disability, gender, religion, and other factors. This is, as I mentioned earlier on, for our children, our grandchildren, all the generations to come, not only for human life, but also for animal life above and underwater, the environment, and to impact the climate change. My name is Paolo Cruz, Land Afrique. Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Kessia, AUHF, and all the others helping organizing this.
Thank you so much, Paolo, for a very interesting presentation. We have few questions.
Yes, please.
So let me just jump right in. In your understanding, in how you operate, what is the minimum size of an area to warrant designing a master plan?
Well, every location is different, and every location has got its own specifications and its opportunity also. So it varies. For instance, the Agbara estate is 454 hectares. Otta is also one of the next locations that is around 60 hectares. Kefi, it's almost 9,000 hectares. In Ghana, we're looking at 150 hectares. We're in discussions with the Angolan government now also for an affordable housing plan. It varies.
Thank you. And other question, do you intervene in greenfield areas or existing settlement? If in existing settlement, what is your approach towards the public administration? If greenfield, how do you approach social integration versus segregation?
Well, as mentioned throughout the presentation, we need to involve all the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. So yes, the governments, both municipalities, state governments, and federal governments need to be involved. So there's a close collaboration with all of them. With the stakeholders, we cannot forget the communities. The communities are the most important ones. As mentioned, if you don't have the local chief on board, you won't do nothing. It's important to create opportunities for them, constantly communicate, involve them in the plans and in the execution throughout. We even before starting to develop, we already employ a few people from the local communities, so that they are immediately involved, and that we show not only with words but with acts that that what we do is serious, not on the short term but on the long term.
Thank you so much, Paolo. There are more questions, but unfortunately time is running out. But I invite you, Paolo, if you are still available, to interact with the participant on the chat section. They are very interested in your project. So Paolo is still online with us a little bit. So if you can,
I'll be here on the chat today and tomorrow. I will
Fantastic.
also put my email on here on this chat, so you can also address this separately if you need or if you want.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paolo. And again, congratulations. Thank you very much for this presentation. And now I invite the participant to continue engaging with him, and to click on the session tab on the left to go to the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you.
Take care.